Hi, friend. Welcome to Step Forward and Speak. Are you ready to conquer doubt and believe in the power of your voice? Because confidence doesn't hide, play small, or diminish its abilities. It actually steps forward. I'm Terri Mullen, mom to 4 adults, wife of 34 years, a midlife entrepreneur, and your confidence coach who turned self-doubt into confidence and courage to speak, write my book, start a podcast, and launch my business. Now, I empower other amazing women just like you to do the same. I share practical strategies to crush fear, boost confidence, and use your voice to create greater impact and income as a new entrepreneur. I have walked this path, and I'm here to empower you every step of the way. Let's step forward. Grab your headphones because you don't want to miss this episode. You actually get to meet my business and podcast coach, Stefanie Gass. Not only is she a boss, but she's a boundary boss and a 7-figure CEO. She helps women grow their online businesses and make consistent income using podcasting. She's the host of a top 20 globally ranked business podcast, Online Business for Christian Women. And she believes that it's possible to partner with God to create income and impact without sacrificing your family, faith, or buying into the social media hustle. Yep, she's a rock star, and she's an all-around authentic and amazing woman. So grab your notepad because this episode is full of golden nuggets. Well, hello, Stefanie Gass. I'm so excited you're here. Welcome. This is one of my favorite things to do an interview. And I'm just grateful for your time. I know you're super busy, so thank you again.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm so excited to be here, Terri. Anything for you?
So before we dive in, I kind of want to give a little background, just how I found you. Several years ago, I took my very first course with Kathy Heller, actually, for Made to Do This. You were a guest speaker for one of the sessions, and I followed you ever since. And I started my podcast, kind of done it all bass-backwards, as I say.
Right.
Kind of messy, and I realized that I kind of need to get to the next level, took your boot camp, P2P, and now I say, you are a business and podcast coach. Woohoo!
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful for you. And I think you love coffee and Peloton just as much as I do. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. Some of my favorite things, friend.
Awesome. And who is your favorite Peloton instructor?
Okay, so total disclaimer, Terri and I had to look up all the names before we started recording because it's like, your favorites, but it's so hard to remember their actual names. So Cliff Dwellinger, I think is his last. It's Cliff D. And he actually has worship rides, if that's your jam. I had no idea. And I found them one day. And now, like, when I need a good sweat and worship session, Cliff is your guy. Tune Day
Awesome.
is amazing. And then my other favorite is Rebecca Kennedy. And she's just so cute and spunky. And honestly, what it is like she has body goals. I'm like, Rebecca Kennedy has the cutest bod. And I'm like, that's the goals. I'm going to do weight training with Rebecca today.
Awesome. Well, these are some more inspiration for me because I kind of have my favorites too, kind of the classics, Kendall, Jen, Robin, and Olivia. So I'm going to try some new people. I'm excited about that.
Fun.
Yeah.
Good.
So let's kind of dive into this a little bit. I say that if anyone can do this, do the podcasting. If I can do this, anyone can do this. As you know, my listeners are probably mostly midlife women who are pivoting to become entrepreneurs, or they are already, and they're really curious about podcasting. They wonder if they're qualified to do it or if they can really grow a business with podcasting. So I've decided that there's no one better to answer these questions than you. You are a boss in this space. You are such an inspiration. You've grown your business in 5.5 years to 7 figures. So thank you again just for being here. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm so excited to talk about this today. I think podcasting is, when you're not podcasting, it probably seems really big and scary and audacious. Like you said, who am I and where would I start? And no one would listen to me. But what's funny is, now I bet you can attest to this too, Terri, being on the other side of podcasting, it's actually one of the most simple and easiest ways that we can create content that will work for us. We just have to take the confusion out of it and the, mysticism about how does it actually work? And then how do I start one? And once we get clear on those things, the actual execution of podcasting, I think it's one of the easiest ways to actually grow a business.
Wow, that's so encouraging. And for me, I mean, it started as kind of a hobby, right?
Yeah.
So now the reason I really reached out to you is just because I need to up level and really see the business side of it. But it feels
Mhm.
really daunting at first, right? And
Yeah.
that confusion. And I love how you say that confusion, the confusion comes before the clarity,
Yes.
right? And I've wobbled through that. So explain a little bit about how you feel like it's really simple, like one of the easier things when you're
Mhm.
saying this that you
Yeah.
used to do.
Right. And so I think when you think about, like you said, so many of your women are either thinking about starting a business, pivoting, or they have one.
Yeah.
All we know to do is go online and look for like, how do I grow a business? Right. Like, how do I actually get leads? And typically what we think in our mind is like, oh, I'll just go get followers.
Right.
I'll find followers and that's how I'll grow a business. And so, and myself included, that's what I did. I'm sure, Terri, that's what you did. We went and we started posting more stuff on social media because that's what we thought it was. Followers must equal business growth. Well, what happened for me is that I was spending 4-ish hours a day, Terri, on Instagram specifically, growing my business. I have air quotes up. And what that strategy looked like was create content daily, capture stories of my life to resonate with my person, grab cute things of my kids because my woman has kids and resonate with her, and then go through the DMs, try to start conversations with people, go follow people back. It was so much time and energy. And what ended up happening is like my business grew, but it was so small, and it was the following is what was growing. Like I ended up hitting like 40,000 followers. I had 1,000 likes per post, 500-600 views on all my stories. And so it's like, well, it's grown. Like this is the point, right? To get all these followers. But I wasn't actually seeing any of those followers translate into clients. I wasn't seeing any financial gain from these followers. And the amount of time I was spending was insane. Like the other thing for me that was happening is I felt like my anxiety was through the roof. I felt addicted to the platform. I couldn't put my phone down. I had all these conversations going and none of them were going anywhere. And like I was so drained and burnt out. And I would have been potentially different if I was seeing the fruits of that labor, but I wasn't. I was just missing my kids and burnt out. So all these things I was doing that people told me I had to do, they weren't actually working. And so what happened for me is I kind of got to this breaking point around something's got to give. Like this whole social media growth strategy thing, like it's not working for me, but I don't know what else to do. And at this point, I had been throwing spaghetti at the wall. I had tried blogging and that really wasn't going anywhere. I had gotten so distracted and started making t-shirts on Amazon because I thought like, well, I just need to make money. And I got distracted by like, well, what's a quick way to make money instead of the thing I'm really called to do, which we all do when we're new entrepreneurs or pivoting. And so I'm doing all this stuff. And for me, my faith is a huge piece of my business journey. And so I started to pray, like, Lord, please show me how I'm supposed to reach the women I'm called to serve. Like, I'm super confused. I'm tired. I miss my kids. I knew that if God was going to be, that God was a part of my business and I needed to let him lead me in that next step. And so I had nowhere else. I was tired of relying on myself because I kept leading myself to dead ends and to these like things that just weren't working. So in October of 2018, I had a dream and it felt very prophetic. It was very clear. And I heard start a podcast.
Wow.
And I went, huh? Like, I don't listen to podcasts and say, I don't know what, like about what, how, no one's going to listen to me, all the things, right? That spiral into your mind. But I knew that that was a word from God for me. And so I was obedient in it. And I plugged in a mic. It was this staticky, because I didn't have any money. I wasted it all. Like I didn't, nothing was working. So I couldn't invest in all. I mean, I didn't invest in anything. I got the staticky mic out of the drawer. I made my own podcast art, which was really ugly. It was awful, but I just started speaking. And I knew like, if I can just start, even if it's super messy, because I felt that it was prompting from God for me, that he would make a way for it to work. Well, what's crazy, Terri, is I started to shift out of social media marketing and I got rid of about 20 hours a week that I was spending on Instagram and trying to grow it. and I started doing 2 hours a week on podcasting. So instead of 20, it was 2. And I just did super short episodes. I didn't edit them. They were just me, my staticky microphone talking about random. I didn't even have a good niche, right? Like I started very, very messy. And what happened was just so crazy. People started knocking on the inbox. These women would come in to my email or into the DMs and say, I heard your podcast. Do you coach?
Wow.
And I went, what is happening? Like I've had to chase people for so many years. I'm chasing them, like trying to get them to buy the thing or work with me, or like, a few businesses back, I was in network marketing and I was trying to push products on them. Well, I'm like, this is a phenomenon. This is crazy. Like they're coming to me. So I'm like, sure, I'll coach you. I start taking some of these women in these coaching calls, started at $80 an hour. Within 18 months, Terri, because of the podcast and the demand that it had created in the coaching business, I was at $800 an hour, completely maxed on coaching availability, so much to the point I had to phase out of coaching. Like it was so obviously bigger than me for me to trust that it wasn't the thing that the world kept telling me it was. Like, it's not social media. There's a better way and an easier way. And I got back 18 hours a week, Terri. Like I was able to be with my kids again. And it was so powerful for me that I ended up getting off of Instagram completely for a very long time. It was over a year and a half. I didn't even have the platform. It just stuck in like the old stuff that was there.
Yeah.
And I just recently got on and like cleaned it out, but I still don't post or spend time. I don't have the app on my phone or anything like that. We don't use it organically for me to grow my business, because the time I got back was so sacred. And what I realized, that long story, the point of it is that, I'm never going to just do what everyone tells me that I should do ever again. I'm going to look at the data of what's actually working for me and my life. And I'm going to put boundaries in place around what's most important. And then I'm going to lean into what's working, and I'm not going to look up. So what I found is podcast blew this thing up. I'm going to go podcasting like blood, sweat, and tears, and I will not get distracted. And that was almost 6 years ago now. And podcasting since has been my number one lead generating tool. It's the way that we convert sales. Every single day I get sales from the podcast. It's easy, it's fun, and it's really allowed me to release these beliefs that I had around showing up everywhere. Because what I found is when you show up in less places, but with more intention and longevity, you're going to have a bigger result over time.
Wow. I mean, that's so powerful. I've heard part of your story, but I've never really, or I don't recall the part about God really telling you podcasting, and that you really started out just so raw and just, okay, just did it. One of the things I was thinking about with you is that I know you've always been a leader. I can see, like with your network marketing and all that stuff that you've done, you've obviously always had really strong leadership, but you had young kids back then. So, being on social media, which even still today, we're still told that's the way to do it, right? To just spend time, DM, respond, and then you just you get on this hamster wheel and completely burn yourself out, which guilty, and started to do that myself. So that's why I'm like, I need Stefanie Gass.
Yes.
So it's just so fascinating. And you have now grown this 7-figure business in 5.5 years, almost 6 years.
Yeah.
Without social media.
Yep. Now, social media, I have a Facebook group.
Right.
And that is something that we use as our community. So we do have that. I do have a Facebook page. It's just kind of been there, and we'll promote back to the podcast. And so I think what's important for people who are listening to this, I'm not saying you can't have social media or you shouldn't. I'm just saying, how are you using the tool? And is the tool actually benefiting you? So for us, what we found is it was fine if I wanted to have a social platform, but the platform was not the lead generating tool. It was what pointed back to the podcast. So anything I put out into the world, it goes back to the podcast. Like if I send out an email to my list, it's just pointing back to the show and the offer. If I put something out on our Facebook page, it's simply pointing back to the podcast or an offer, right? Like all fingers and arrows point back to the thing that is the thing that is the thing. And so that's the big question for you guys. It's not, well, I have 5 things, right? I have an Instagram and a TikTok, and I heard this other thing is cool, so I'm going to go do that. And I podcast and I YouTube. You've got to have one core method of growing your business that is long form, that you're so committed to until that thing is producing really super well. Then we look at the next thing. So yes, I have next things going on now, but I didn't for 3 years. It was podcasting, and that was it. Until that thing is like going really simplified, streamlined, then we look up and add that next thing.
Wow, that's just such powerful insight. And and the thing I love about you too, you're so transparent and so honest about your journey, where you've been, where you are. And I think you have just such incredible business insight, you know? So for anyone that feels like they can't profit from this,
Yeah.
right? Those doubts that kind of circulate in our mind and we think that we can't, obviously, what do you say, right? It
Yeah.
obviously works as long as you kind of stick to one thing. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
I think the most important thing to consider when you're feeling really confused or overwhelmed or like you can't is that, you know, confusion doesn't come from God. Like we can look into scripture and know that. And so realizing that if you can just get clear on like, what is the thing I've done in my life? Like look, draw a line in the sand and say, look behind you. What have I done? Those are where the clues are. Like, what are the hard things you've walked through? Look at the traumas and the trials. There's clues in there. And then clean up all the things that you think you should do or could do and get clear on what is the one thing I'm called to do. Who are the people I'm called to help? If you can begin with that, it will alleviate so much confusion. Because I think what happens for a lot of people when they tell me they're confused or it's too much, they're coming from a space trying to build a business based on where they want to go. They're like, oh, I'm going to pivot and I'm going to become whatever, let's say a life coach. But they haven't yet become a life coach, but then they build a podcast around teaching people to life coach. And so what happens is like, well, you're confused because you haven't done the thing.
Yeah.
So if you look backwards, there's no confusion because you've already done it. And so that's going to help you feel really confident in the thing you're going to build the podcast around. And then the other piece to make this really simple is instead of worrying about the bottom of your funnel, like what will I sell and what will my website look like? And like all these other things that come later, just get the top of the funnel built, which is the podcast or the YouTube channel or the blog. What's your long form going to be? Those are your only 3 options: blog, YouTube, and podcast. And so pick the one that makes sense for you. In my opinion, podcasting is the fastest, cheapest, easiest, and most highly converting. My second would be YouTube, and my last would be blogging. And so that's just my opinion. But once you focus on just get that done, it reduces the pressure of figuring out this whole huge puzzle. And instead, you're just finding your 4 corner pieces. Like, I'm just starting with the podcast. Let me get that going. Let me get comfortable. Let me just breathe and start a little messy. Then I'll look up and say, where are my next few pieces of the puzzle? Because the confusion is coming in because you're trying to do all of it when you're brand new. And that is just going to hurt you because you're going to learn so much through the podcasting process that you're going to redo everything that you wasted time on in the beginning anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't we know that?
We know that.
Yeah. We go back and clean up the hot mess we created. And that's why we all come to you. So I know I'm going off a little bit here on some of the things I was going to ask you, but just thinking about when you're speaking, like that's one of the things you offer and clarify your calling too, is really helping women. Well, I say for women, but people get really clear on what that is, that one thing that they're really clear on, because it's so easy to get so distracted and we sell ourselves short on the experiences, I think, and the things that we've been through and the things that God has really called us in our gifting, right?
Yeah.
And that's really your gift, is really, you've got incredible discernment and really helping people really focus in on what that is, I believe. So
yeah, I think it's sometimes getting out of your own way of the weeds, because it's hard for us to see what our thing is because we live in it. Like it is our actual lives, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only way we get clarity is by doing. I think you said earlier, you're going to have confusion before clarity 100% of the time. So when I started my podcast back in 2018, it was called Mompreneur Mastermind Show. And I was not sure, like, what am I doing? I knew a little bit. I had a little clarity, like, oh, it's for these mompreneurs and I'm helping them grow their businesses and make sales. And some of them are in network marketing because that's where I started. I had a realm like that I was serving. And so my podcast came out and I was a little bit all over the place. I was talking about sales one day, and then I would talk about like network marketing the next day. And then I would talk about being a mom and managing your schedule with your kids. But what happened is because I started, I was getting feedback. I was actually having people listen, and I could start to pay attention to which episodes are downloaded the most. What are they emailing me? What are the words that they're using? And over the course of about 6 months, it became very clear around, oh, wow, like I'm not actually serving this whole realm. I'm serving this little pocket of this realm, which was helping moms at that time get clarity on what their business would be. That's where I started, got it. And that's where the coaching business blew up. It was when I finally let go of all the things I could do and got down to like, what have I done? This is the thing I'm going to teach. And then what's so fun about that, once you have success, you take one step out. Like you're not pigeonholed forever into the little niche that you start with. You're going to grow. I ended up growing a top 20 podcast, and then I built the podcast course, and it was the next step for my women and some men now who have gotten clarity. And then I ended up building this successful company from the podcast. And then I had built the next offer. So it was this beautiful natural ascension model that was created over 6 years. That all started though with me going, I'm willing to go inward and niche really deep down and marry podcasting and allow that to become the thing that I'm proud of. The one thing that I can just know it's sustainably going to be here for me. There's no shelf life with podcasting. It's like, what's the word? Just the sustainability of it. And then the other piece was the conversion. So in my big story in the beginning, when I told you guys about, I got all the followers, but they didn't convert. Well, the podcast had a fraction of those numbers, and it had hit 6 figures within 12 months.
Within 12 months?
Yes.
Wow. I'm learning some new things here too. Wow. Within 12 months.
It's because of the depth. Like when you have an episode that talks about, let's say I did one on 4 steps to get clear on what your niche will be so you can start a business. Well, when people search for the word niche or start a business, that episode comes up. They listen, they like me, they resonate. Some people, Terri, they were booking from that first episode they've ever heard from me because they hung out with me for 20 whole minutes.
Yeah.
Like where else are we able to capture 20 minutes of someone's time these days?
Right.
It's audio only. Video, it doesn't hold attention because we can scroll and click. It's not what it used to be. Reading, we don't have the attention span to read anymore. Right. So really this audio platform is what's still allowing us as content creators to go deep enough with people to get them to take action.
That's just solid gold. And I think what is, at least for me as you're speaking, one of the things that I love so much is that your authenticity, you're brilliant. I mean, you really help us all too with the business aspect of it. It's taking you from whatever this idea of a hobby and really creating this business, but from a heart-centered space and really trusting your own calling and really listening to God's voice. It's just, I don't know, there's a lot of magic here. And I marvel. I mean, even as I'm talking to you here today, I'm just learning even more, but this is what makes you so amazing at this, because you've been through this, you have this heart and compassion to help people move forward, but you also have an incredible business sense. You kind of tie it all together, and it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Terri.
Yeah, it's really true. So if I were to ask you, obviously now you've grown this business and now you're kind of being stretched and challenged in new ways. You're now speaking and you've got some other things in the works here.
Yeah.
Which is super exciting. What is the one thing that you think that you wish you would have known 5 years ago? If you were starting out again, kind of would you say about that?
Oh man. Yeah. I think the biggest thing 5 years ago is I kept allowing myself to get so stressed out with where like the frustration point of not being at 6 figures or not being at 7 figures or not having a company or not having someone on my team with me. Like I'm doing everything right. And like, I'm so frustrated, like I think I would have said like, hey girl, if you can just chill and
Mm,
do your best today with the few tasks that you've got to do, trust that in a few short years, you're going to be farther than you ever dreamed you could be.
wow.
Like releasing the pressure of
Mm,
wanting it now. I would have told myself, like, you're not ready now. If God opened the floodgates on you, you would drown,
yeah.
like in his good and perfect timing. And that would have allowed me to have more peace in the building process than I had.
Mm. That's solid gold right there because I even think about myself. Here I am. I met you, didn't meet you personally, but, was familiar with you all those years ago. And if I would have even taken your course back then, I wouldn't have been ready. Like
Yes.
I've had to go through more of my own messy stuff, make my own mistakes. And now here, 80 something podcasts, episodes later,
Yeah.
now I'm ready. Now I'm ready. Now I'm
Yes.
open. So that's just
Yes.
absolutely beautiful. That
I
makes
think
so much
we
sense.
just have to remember that, wherever your faith journey finds you listening to this episode,
Yeah.
that we're all on this journey, not only of our growth, but the growth in which, like, what is our capacity to serve? What is
Mm,
our capacity to give? What is our capacity to create? And until we push through those little fear barriers and those little trials and
mm,
challenges that God gives us, he's preparing us for the ultimate things that we are going to be able to step into.
mm,
And the only way that we get there is like we press into that next fear a little bit. But the big mindset shift around that is like, I'm just here for the learning in it. Like I'm accepting that this is going to be hard and it's not on my timing. It's that
mm,
acceptance, because we can either keep striving and clawing our way forward and making
mhm,
it hard and stressful and like have all this angst and frustration and comparison and imposter syndrome, or we can go, I'm so here for wherever God has me today. And
mm.
I'm so excited about what he's preparing me for. The heart posture and the mindset shift that will happen, it will permeate your entire life. The way that you talk to your family, the way that you show up for your work, and also the way that God shows up in your business, because he'll go, wow, she's ready, right? Like she's able to receive now and not be like, he knew that I was a mess, a decade ago, and was like, this girl got some work to do. Now, I'm so fine with it today, but if I could have told myself back then, I think it would have helped me so much to remember that it's not about me anyway. And
Oh,
that
I love that.
pressure would have just fallen away.
I love that. It's not about me. And I've had to tell myself that. I know just even on your recent podcast that you just did, I think you talk a little bit about that. It's not about us, right? And when we step outside of ourselves and allow God and figure out how we can serve, it just puts us in that one person we're trying to serve. It just
Yeah,
gives us a whole different mindset shift, right? Because
exactly.
I've walked in similar shoes and felt so overwhelmed and tried to do all the things. And, I just completely almost quit and gave my,
Yeah.
burnout. This is just solid. I just love this. It's so true. And I've learned so much from you. You're just a gift to all of us, to women, not only as a podcaster who's still going strong in this business, but also as a businesswoman. It's just really, and as a Christian businesswoman,
Yeah.
it's beautiful to see. You have kind of this inner strength, and it comes across, and you're funny. You've got a great sense of humor,
Tell
and
my husband you said that, because I'm
I,
like, I swear people think I'm funny.
I think you're hilarious, and you laugh at yourself too. You're just honest about who you are, and I think that just really makes all of us feel super comfortable. And I just thank you. I think you're just a gift. In closing, is there anything else you'd like to say? Anything I've missed? Is
I
there
think the
anything?
only thing I would leave everyone with is, if you decide, like, I do want to start podcasting, or I'm going to get clear on what my niche is, and then you go to actually start, and it's overwhelming, right? Like, oh, do I do this? Do I do that? Do I follow this coach? Do I buy this course? Do I just do it myself? If you
Yeah.
can just focus on, and this goes for actually anything in your business and even your life, what's the next right step? Like, what's the
Mm,
next one thing that I'm going to do to get ultimately closer? That will help you move forward. Instead of
mm,
figuring out what's my big audacious plan for the next 12 months, you're going to do step one and things are going to pivot, like things are going to shift. And so you waste time trying to figure out all the hows that are so far beyond you. So
yeah.
just do step one, then you stop, you do some more research. What is step two? That tactically will help you move faster than if you try to figure it all out up front.
That's so powerful. And I know that's how you operate your course too, which is
Mhm.
really, really powerful. It helps you kind of do it, learn, do
Yep.
it, move forward. Learn,
Yes.
do it, move forward. Anyway, powerful, really great. As you keep mentioning audacious, and just on the side note, I have a
Yeah.
bracelet on here, and my word is audacious. So I just love that. It perks me up every time you say it.
Oh, I
Just
didn't even
hearing,
know I was saying it. That must be for
yeah,
you, Terri.
it must be awesome. Um, Before we close, I got a couple things, but one, is there any kind of fun fact or something inspirational or something, a fun fact about you that you'd like to share with everybody, that something, maybe that was it? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would go back to the fear thing. Like I get afraid too. And I think
Mm,
our capacity for fear stretches the more that we press into it. So as an
mm,
example, I've been afraid, this is a hilarious one, but of speaking in person. And I've been
mm,
a speaker for my whole life. I've been doing this virtual thing now for whatever, 8 years. Like I was in network marketing, just always had this story in my head around these big stages that like, I can't do it. I'm going to need to clear my throat. I had the weirdest things in my head around why I shouldn't do those things. I'm going to sound nervous. I had all these thoughts, and I kept getting the opportunities to start speaking and wanting to make every reason why I shouldn't, but I kept saying yes to push into my fear.
yeah.
And little by little, more opportunities kept coming and coming, coming. And I ended up doing my first big real stage a month and a half ago. It's a full keynote. It was an hour. And I
Wow.
had the videographers and the photographers and the
Mm.
lights and the mic that makes you look official and like all this stuff. And I'm going, it was great. Like it was perfectly fine. And I did an amazing, and I didn't even feel scared when I was up there. And it brings me back to like when I was so afraid of the thing,
Mhm.
that was not actually reality. It was simply a made up story that I was allowing to keep me from opportunity.
Mm.
And so I want you guys to remember and recognize that if you have a fear, it may actually not be founded. And you
Mm.
need to stretch yourself and do the very thing you're most afraid of, and watch that fear stretch out to where it takes more to scare you. It takes bigger things to set you back. And then you just press into those too.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I know that you have a really exciting event coming up too. Life's kind of coming full circle here. You're going to be
Yeah.
doing Her Turn to Podcast. You'll be a speaker for that, for Kathy Heller's Her Turn to Podcast. So there's going to be some
Yes.
amazing speakers, and you'll be one of them. So that's coming up May 20th and 21st. Is that
That's
correct?
right. Yes. In LA. So if you guys are
Yeah.
interested in that, stefaniegass.com/HTTP, Her Turn to Podcast. So that'll be a fun live event where, yeah, speaking again, look at this, Terri, look at the fun little ripple effect that begins to
I
take place when you say yes.
I know. It's exciting. And I'm going to put this in the show notes too, so that people can have access to that, so that they can connect if anybody's near LA, in LA, or wants to fly to LA and learn
Yes.
from some amazing women. It'd be awesome.
100%.
And also, I'm going to include in the show notes here, you're so generous, your free podcast to growth workshop, I think you have. I'll include that in the show notes for everybody, just to kind of figure out kind of what's next for them, if this is something they're thinking about. But you're just a gift. Thank you. Thank you for blessing my life and for pushing me beyond my fears and stretching me. I'm really grateful, and it's a fun ride. So
Yeah,
thank
I'm so
you.
proud of you. It's hard but fun and worth it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for this today.
Of
This is a
course.
gift. And for all of you, please follow Stefanie Gass. Her podcast is Online Business for Christian Women. It's amazing. You'll be so lifted up, and you're fun. Your energy's so great. So everyone can learn a lot from you and all about your programs and courses that you have as well. So thank you so much for being here. Have
Oh,
an
thanks so much for having me. Thanks.
You're
Thanks, Terri.
welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, I hope this episode really blessed you today, and you had a few key takeaways that you can implement in your own life and business. If so, could you take 30 seconds and leave me a review? Because it blesses me to know that this podcast is helping you. And don't forget to click subscribe so that you can catch each episode. Until we meet again, may God bless you, and may you continue to step forward.